So, today I would like to talk to you about the subject of pain and suffering and the various forms that it takes in people's lives and the influences it has on people. Now, if you think about these subjects, there are probably a lot of things that have been written about it, many books that people wrote, um, movies made on these type of things or experiences people had in different situations. For example, victims of wars and those who lost loved ones to death, and those who perhaps suffered something like an illness or a divorce or anything, you can name it. Um, But today I just want to take a closer perspective at this subject. And the first thing I want to say about it is that pain and suffering is something that no person can escape. It's something that happens to every person. I don't believe that there is a person that lives a full life, for example, 70 or 80 years, maybe only even 20, 30 years, that does not at some point in their life experience some form of emotional suffering. And it's almost like saying if someone doesn't experience it, it's like living and never feeling any physical pain. For example, you every person will feel physical pain somewhere in their life, uh, even if, yeah, if it's not like chronic illness, it's maybe illness for a short period, or it might be getting hurt in some way or another, whatever way it happens. And just as we cannot escape that fact, just like that, likewise, we can't experience, or rather escape, emotional suffering. And I know, yeah, this is not something that's nice to discuss or even, yeah, to experience, because it's something people naturally want to escape from. If you think about, for example, as I mentioned, physical pain, that is something that people do not want to experience, and the reason they don't want to experience this is because it's unpleasant, and we as people, human beings, naturally want to experience things that are pleasant, and we don't want bad things to happen to us. And likewise, um, any type of emotional suffering has the same effect on us. We also naturally don't want to experience it. But what's interesting, if I look my life and from stories that I hear, I've realized that if I had never felt pain in my life, I wouldn't perhaps be the type of person I am today. And I can't say in what ways I would have been different, but I know that I would have been a different person. And I believe one positive thing that comes from suffering is wisdom. And I cannot say I'm wise, exceptionally wise, but I have learned truths that I think I would not have learned if my life was only pleasant. And uh, um, yes, all these things I've just experienced as had an influence on me. And what's also interesting to me is if you look at people who went through great emotional distress, for example, Viktor Frankl, that Jewish psychiatrist that was in the Nazi concentration camps, then you realize the impact that suffering had on a person like him, for example. And if you go and look at things that he wrote, quotes of him, and I know he also reached a very old age, and it's always interesting for me to see how people of that suffered greatly sometimes um, reach a very old age, and it's almost as if their suffering helped them to endure many things through life, and perhaps maybe even physical illnesses, and because of that emotional strength that um, they had, and but they did not have it on their own. It was something that was acquired, that through the suffering they experienced. And this is quite important to me, if you look at it, and at that impact that it has on everyone. And something which I've often seen that people who suffered greatly did was they often wrote poems and, for example, maybe magazine articles, made videos, or wrote biographies. And something which I came to realize was that when you write, it just helps you to relieve some of that feelings. And I think that's why we often hear of people that went through a lot of pain, and then they write books about it, and even just by studying the life of another person, because and yeah, if you read what people, for example, biographies and autobiographies that are written when people write about their own experience, and about the lives of others that they've studied, and what they learned through what they went through. And something else which also came to my mind was that suffering brings out your deepest feelings. And I, for example, am a person that thinks very deeply, and I always want an answer for something. Sometimes, if someone tells me something, then I always want to just find out more. Why is this so, and why is that so? I don't just want to accept an answer as it is, and I want to know why something is like that and works like it works. And the one thing I've come to realize is that our greatest joy is not found when we have the perfect circumstances, but I think our greatest joy is actually found when we come to terms with what we've experienced, when we learn to accept what we have experienced, and when we no longer try to fight against our own emotions and that what which we went through, and when we um, start to realize the purpose of that which we went through, and it's just interesting what we learn through the experiences that we go through. And it I realized that it's all about changing your mind, and we can't control what happened to us, but the way we react to it is what matters most. And that's something that we have control over most of the time. Well, actually, all of the time, because we are in control of our thoughts and um, how we are going to respond to the situation that we go through. And I think it's interesting to know that even younger people can go through something, and when they suffer deeply, they often have more wisdom in situations than others that might be much older than them. And I think this is also a result of what they went through. And then, of course, there are those people who are just naturally born with certain qualities that make them more sensitive towards certain experiences. And what one person might regard as nothing might be an issue for another person. And of course, there are experiences people go through that are painful for anyone. But for some people, the pain of certain things, whether it be loss or any type of suffering they experience, it is just much more emotional for them because of the way their personalities are. For example, I myself am a highly sensitive person. I would describe myself as that. And often when I hear about bad things happening to people, it depends on the situation, but many times I will find myself thinking of things months or probably years after it's happened, or I've read about it, even if it's something that happened many years back. I would still feel the pain as if it was yesterday that it happened, and it would still be the same feeling for me. I would still feel sorry for that person, and even if it's a person who's not alive anymore, I would have that feeling for that person because of what he or she went through. So for me, it's not just what I experience, but it's also what others experience that often hurts me, and what makes me emotional sometimes. And I just came to realize in the past years, learning to have to cope with suffering and with things that I didn't think were as I thought it was, and people who I realized were not the kind of people I thought they were. And then I've also come to realize that even I myself am also capable of being someone else that I think I am. Because it's only when you are in a situation where you are tested that you can really say how you will experience something. And I hope this will serve a lesson to everyone, anyone who listens to this, that they will realize what life is actually about, and that even something as unpleasant as suffering has a purpose, and our pain is not in vain. And even if we suffer in silence, we will be heard someday, and we will come. I hope that we will come to terms with our suffering and realize that there is a purpose for everything that happens, and it's not there to destroy us, but it's there to help us grow, and it's there to enable us to become better persons if we allow ourselves to be that, and if we allow the situation to change us, and if we are um, we're happy and we realize where our joy really comes from, and what we should do. But thank you for watching, and I hope that there will be people out there for who this will be an inspiring message, and that they will perhaps find answers to questions they've maybe been struggling with, and be able to really come to terms with whatever they've experienced in the past. And I know also that people do not always feel the greatest pain when they experience it, but it's sometimes only after months or years that a person really experiences that pain in a deeper way. And I've often heard of people who suffer for many years after a certain event has happened. But I hope it will be of encouragement for everyone who listens, and that they will be able to learn something from it, and really think about their lives and think about the real purpose that they have, and what really matters in life.